First, I'm joined by a fantastic team highlighting how effective partnerships result in all-around wins, both for companies, but importantly for workers and job seekers. To discuss their collaboration, I'm pleased to welcome Michael Force, Executive Leader of Boeing's Leadership, Learning, and Organizational Capability Team, John Rote, CISO and Vice President, Corporate and Student Programs, and Craig Schultz, Chief Product Officer, both of RapidAscent. Thank you, gentlemen, for being here today. Appreciate your time. Michael, I wanted to start with you. So Boeing has obviously been a longtime leader in workforce development, innovating around how to ensure your talent meets your business strategies. Talk a little bit about your work and this particular partnership specifically focused on cybersecurity jobs and training.
Can you hear me okay? Thanks so much for inviting us to this session, Cheryl. Yeah, I'll just speak a little bit. We're all coming out of crisis, and one of the things that Andy Grove, one of my first CEOs when I was at Intel, taught was, the not so good companies won't survive a crisis. The good ones might survive, but the best ones come out stronger, and we're looking to come out stronger. We've seen quite a few trends affect the labor industry and the world. COVID being number one, but also economic disparity continues to widen, climate change, and then this fourth industrial revolution of these new technologies where all the technology in the cloud can just accelerate. And that creates some really good things, and it creates some potentially scary things like cyber threats. So we're looking at all these trends and saying, how do we develop for the future and come out stronger? And we think we've created a pretty unique cutting edge workforce development system that has really 5 attributes. And it's very much tied to business strategy. So we're working with the most senior leaders of the company to understand where they're taking the business. And then we come alongside and help develop that people aspect, the people lever. And it really looks at critical roles and teams. And then it's a data-driven approach to development and upskilling across the life cycle of critical roles and teams. So we want everyone to develop their role and career with an emphasis on the most critical roles and teams that can move the business forward. So we think we're onto something good there, and it really leads to more stackable credentials and upskilling on all these new technologies, but on other skills the roles need to perform. What we're realizing, though, is that we can't do it all by ourselves. In the old days of a corporate university where have a whole bunch of learning assets, offer them open enrollment, and then track consumption and satisfaction. That's, although many companies are still stuck in that mode, it's really a way of the past. What we're really trying to do is get more laser focused on upskilling, and we can't keep up with all the new technology. Having thousands of courses and maintaining them and designing more and finding new gaps and designing more is not the way of life for a good learning organization anymore. And so we needed partnerships to help us, people who can keep up on the latest technologies, who have expertise. RapidAscent is one of those. They're a startup that's really disrupting the field of education. People with degrees need to continue their development, and those who don't have degrees need job skills, ready job skills. And what we see in companies like RapidAscent is expertise from the leaders of that organization. In this case, these people are world-class leaders in cybersecurity, but also to then provide that continuous upskilling and get people job ready in a critical area that's part of this fourth industrial revolution. So, and their expertise right now is cybersecurity. So that's why we formed a partnership with them to tie into this workforce development system that we've created.
So to the RapidAscent team, Dr. Schultz and John, what makes sort of your approach different or most effective in meeting the needs of companies? And are you specific to cybersecurity, or are you broader? Just talk a little bit about your company.
Yeah, so this is Craig, and to start off, so right now we're primarily focused on cyber. And our lead team, brings experts who have been around for over 20 years. I don't think anyone's been under 20 years in cyber. So we've been doing it for quite a while, and training at the workforce level. And actually, one of the things to align with what you mentioned, which is kind of post-COVID, that we've been doing is now actually bringing this to the academy level. So we're going after and training non-traditional students. So folks who are coming in with no background in cyber, maybe displaced by COVID, and are good matches to a cyber career. And so we're bringing that experience to help accelerate them over a 6 to 9 month period, and actually give them the skills that are needed to hit the job right away running. So that's a key part of our approach. To your question of why we can be effective in this area, the one thing we've learned over the last few years, to add on to what Mike said, is that technology in this space is moving very fast, and the controls are moving fast. But clearly, over the last few years, the threats are moving faster. And so it's very difficult for companies to maintain that knowledge on what the current threat profile looks like to their industry or to their specific company, and really be able to train on the skills around that on an ongoing live basis. And so that's what we do. We basically bring together the latest threats, the latest security controls, and the latest best practices against those threats. And we train on skills in that area. And maybe the best way to look at it is, everyone's familiar with the various cybersecurity certifications that are provided. A lot of times those, test for knowledge and make sure that you're familiar with a lot of the things that are going on. But maybe as an analogy, if you're having someone fly a plane in the aviation area, you can test someone for knowledge in terms of, getting into the cockpit and what everything does, but actually, operating the plane and flying it, and being able to respond quickly to different issues and have the fundamentals of flying is different than taking essentially a knowledge-based certification. And that's where our program comes in. We go beyond certifications into skills-based operation against malware threats and best practices. And we actually track flight hours, so to speak. So we're tracking how long someone has against a certain type of threat. Maybe it's the latest ransomware, maybe it's SolarWinds supply chain, depending upon the industry and the risk, to companies in that area. And we're actually tracking the performance within the cockpit and tracking, how well they're doing, again, how many flight hours they have, so that when a company hires or is upskilling, they can actually, before they, put someone on a system, they can actually, micro-credential them, given our program, and then have them actually take on that flight control. So they can be assured that they're ready to go, on those systems, and that they've had that live fire time on it.
So interesting. And I mean, I think, we've all experienced the results of recent cyber attacks and long lines at the gas station. And but it just makes you think, is there anybody who doesn't need to be thinking about this and doesn't need somebody in their enterprise that is trained by you or someone else on cybersecurity? I don't know who might want to answer that, John. Yeah.
Let John answer that one. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, based on the latest CISO report, where they surveyed approximately 1,400 CISOs, and it showed that is a big concern of the CISOs, because it's getting difficult to find qualified candidates that they can bring in and fill the positions. And even some, the candidates they do bring in, they're bringing in, and they're not meeting the roles. They're not meeting what they needed, but they were a good candidate for cyber. And the other thing they're running into is the positions. It's hard to fill the positions, which puts the company, at additional risk.
Yeah.
So that's something, that's what we're trying to resolve here. You need up to, 6 to 9 months and hundreds of thousands of dollars of training. And I've been there to bring in candidates who really aren't qualified. You have to get them to that point where, it reduces the risk to your company. And then when you get them to that point, they have a tendency to leave. So that's what we're trying to resolve.
Is there any, is there a difference between what Boeing needs in terms of its cybersecurity workforce versus other companies? And do you work directly with a company in order to I guess, customize the training? This is coming, I'm asking questions of somebody who's not an expert in cyber. So I don't, that might be a dumb question, but I'm curious about how you work directly with companies.
So that is a great question, actually. And yeah, what I would say is, if you take a look at, for instance, a financial institution, so what do they typically need? They're running branches, maybe globally, and they're running terabytes of financial data through their data center. So scalability and the ability to track attacks that are some of the first of their kind is top of mind for financial companies. That kind of high throughput capability in cyber and monitoring is very different than, let's say, utility or pipeline that's really trying to protect a very specific area. They don't have a lot of attacks oftentimes. But when the attacks come, they're very, very, devastating, and they can be catastrophic. That's a very different, type of skill set between those two. And of course, if you're Boeing, you're looking at aerospace, right? And so you're looking at how do my engineers, how do my coders, actually secure their systems. And so you're talking, by company, by industry, as you mentioned, very different requirements. And so what we're doing is building a platform that allows companies to actually specify what their skills are, what type of products they're running, and then how much flight time, is required to be able to secure those systems. And then we adjust the curriculum for both upskilling, and then actually within our academy, for those who are looking for apprenticeships in companies, we actually feed that directly into the students so that they're being trained right on the skills that are required for those positions. And that makes them more successful because, you can shotgun approach cyber, but allowing people to focus in on an industry quickly and really understand what they need to know to do that job effectively, we find is the best way to train folks. And then they can advance from there. They can move into different types of positions.
One of you all mentioned the sort of rapid nature of this industry or this particular area. And I wonder if that sort of, it seems to me that just lends itself to the type of training that you all do in this startup that you are, as opposed to, say, a traditional, 4-year degree program around cybersecurity. Are you guys, is there a difference in the way that you were able to sort of respond quickly, change your curriculum, be sort of in the moment and responsive to needs as they're changing so quickly?
Yeah, so I'd say John Rote's best to answer that. John's been an incident responder at AOL, MetLife, and lead on each of those. So, John, why don't we hear from you a bit on this one?
Yeah, that's an excellent question, actually, because you do need to stay up with the latest threats and risks. And a good example is, was the supply chain that happened recently. And that's a huge one. A lot of companies really didn't think of that threat or risk. And I bet you, 2 years ago, if you had asked a company to go, hey, what are your top 10 risks? Supply chain probably wouldn't even showed up in there. So we can go ahead, and when something like that new comes out, we're partnering with some companies, threat intel companies, where a new threat comes out, we can quickly adapt our curriculum, our courses, our labs to focus on that new threat to keep, our students abreast of the latest risks and threats out there.
It's so interesting. Michael, I wanted to just go back to you quickly. Everyone's seen the numbers, unemployment, 9.3 million, nearly as many open jobs. Is Boeing experiencing this gap, and how are you dealing with its effects?
Yeah, we are definitely, Cheryl. We see ourselves as really competing for tech talent these days. So engineering talent, certainly manufacturing, but also tech talent. And we do see this kind of crossroads of the labor market in the U.S. where there are many people unemployed due to COVID, but at the same time, a lot of open positions that require different skills. So we're doing a couple things in this space. We're working with Rework America and really focused on the diverse COVID unemployed. And it's an alliance of companies within Rework America with Toyota and Zurich Insurance and Duke Energy and others. Google's in there, Microsoft's in there, and really saying, hey, how do we provide some foundational training to help reskill people, particularly diverse COVID unemployed, who can't afford to go back to a 4-year degree, never got one, and don't have the time. They need to, put food on the table. And so our plan is to create an apprenticeship program, at least for starters, in the area of cyber, working with these other companies and working through suppliers like RapidAscent who can help us. And the idea is to give them training, foundational training that could give college credit, like a micro degree, so they learn some things online, but then they get hands-on training from RapidAscent, so they're really job ready. At the same time, having an apprenticeship at Boeing And so they're able to really then get their foot in the door and start working at Boeing, at least part-time, while they get the hands-on training from RapidAscent and finish some foundational courses. That could lead to a 4-year degree if they want, but it also gets them a foot in the door to an entry-level role in an area like cyber that we think is a bridge role to higher order positions within the company, because cyber is so new and emerging. Mm-hmm. We're also doing the same with veterans, military veterans. Boeing has a program called Future Force, and it's a program where it's reskilling military veterans in these new fourth industrial revolution skills. So with cyber also being on the forefront in that space, so that military veterans who are coming out of the military, don't have time or money to go get a degree, can get job ready skills, again, in the same kind of methodology. We think that this is just a start. Cyber is one skill area that's critical. We see others like quality specialists, others where we can hire people without degrees to come in and take apprenticeships, get the right training, and have these stackable credentials.
So is cyber is just where you've begun.
Yes.
You see expanding into some of these other areas too. Interesting. So Dr. Schultz and John, I'm not sure who might be best to answer this, but how have you seen your work change over the last year, or your partnerships with companies? Has it meant growth for you, or a different kind of partnership?
So I'll take that one initially, and John, you can follow up. But yeah, it really has changed recently, especially with some of the more dynamic attacks here. And again, I think the bigger issue here is with these latest attacks, what we've seen is the need for cybersecurity personnel go up, not down. And so while right now there are about 600,000 positions unfilled, we're seeing that rise. It'll probably cross 1 million positions unfilled right now. And so, key here is just, making sure that, these different companies can actually, have staff on site that can handle the latest attacks. The other thing I'd mention is that things have really shifted from, as you've noticed throughout COVID, suddenly there's been a massive cloud migration. So many people are going off their on-site systems to remote or to cloud-based systems. And so, a lot of these companies do not have the expertise in those areas. And that's not an expertise that's been trained on, for a lot of schools. And so what we're seeing is just almost a disruptive shift in terms of the skills that are required. And that's really what's driven us over the last year to look at, how we accelerate programs, how we train people very rapidly to be able to adjust to kind of these tectonic shifts that are going on right now.
Well, and I think you said something earlier, John, you may have said this, you're able to train somebody who's never had experience in cyber before. And I think that's exactly what we're talking about today, is we have a massive number of people who are unemployed, whose jobs have gone away or not coming back. This is a field where you can take somebody with little to no experience, and as you just said, 600,000 to 1 million jobs. I mean, this is an in-demand field, right?
It is, and I've taken a few folks in the last couple of years that just came in with no experience whatsoever, and they quickly learn if you're training them right and working with them, giving them the hands-on experience, and it's just not the initial training. The other thing we're looking at providing is cyber is a continuous training. When you become an alumni from us, are we done with you? No. You need to continually learn. I know I do. I spend a lot of time at night sitting there learning new stuff. So that's something else that we're looking to provide, is after you've become an alumni, to keep working with you on the latest threats and risks and stuff like that.
That's fantastic. Well, I think we could go on. We could continue this conversation for another hour, I'm sure. And we've certainly seen time and again that when employers invest in their talent strategy as a key part of their business strategy, it's certainly sort of a win-win for the company and workers. So I want to thank you, Michael, John, Craig, for illustrating how employers and training partners can play to their respective strengths and build those effective talent pipelines. Thank you guys so much for being here. Appreciate your time.